Well, I'd very much like to be equal to you.
Maybe I'll show you the way.
Welcome back to an N-Cut movie review, and today we have Dune Part 2. And there's only one question about this film. Did it supersede the first one? Did they fix all the issues and become the masterpiece that we know this film can be? Let's find out. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
The film follows on with Timothée Chalamet as Paul Atreides and his mum, Lady Jessica, who's played by Rebecca Ferguson. Essentially, Paul's learning the ways of the Fremen in an attempt to, rise up through the ranks of power once again without telling the Fremen that that's what his intentions actually are. And also tells the love story between Timothée Chalamet's character, Paul, and Zendaya's character, Johnny. The film picks up with Paul. If you remember in the first film, obviously, his house got destroyed by the Harkonnen Empire, led by Christopher Walken, and he actually makes an appearance in this movie as the Emperor, which is sort of a weird sort of role for him. You've never really seen him in something like this, but it's kind of interesting. Lady Jessica, played by Rebecca Ferguson, also has ulterior motives in this film. She essentially wants to become the most powerful, all-benevolent, all-seeing Reverend Mother, and in order to do this, they have to drink some special avatar blue liquid. And Paul is terrorized, by visions of what he sees in the future. And throughout the film, a recurring aspect is Paul wrestling with his prophecy, and also him wrestling with the fact that he's in love with Zendaya's character, who is sort of like a commoner, and whether he wants to live the big, high prophecy life, obviously because he was a duke, comes from a royal family, or if he wants to live the life with Zendaya's character.
Basically live the life of Prince Charles or Prince Andrew. Which one are you going to go with?
This film has an ensemble cast. You've got names like Austin Butler, Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Christopher Walken, Florence Pugh, Stellan Skarsgård, Javier Bardem, Batista, Brolin. The names go on and on and on. And in this film, from the get-go, the man who stole the screen whenever he was on, and pretty much, I think, was the best performance on the whole screen, was Javier Bardem. His acting methods in this film, I felt, were a lot akin to what he was like in No Country for Old Men. In that film, he went all in on being a sociopath, a psychopath even. I think it's been defined as the perfect definition for a psychopath. In this film, he went all in as being a religious fundamentalist. He, in one scene, will be this sort of really over-the-top religious fanatic, and then in the next scene to be having this sort of joking, laughing, funny sort of one-liner that sort of catches you off guard. Really stole the show in this whole movie, and it had a really good flowing effect where it was able to balance some real serious scenes and then have him come in with a quick comedic timing and make the scene flow a little bit better, so it wasn't just so heavy and bogged down all the time.
The opening scene to this film is something that I haven't seen in a very long time, and that is bringing a major character in one by one to establish that kind of immediate connection to that scene. And for me, at least, that built the excitement from what might happen or what might play out, and that is such a smart take by Denny to do so and really build a precedent straight off the bat.
Another thing that made that opening sequence so memorable as well is it's sort of silent for the first maybe 15, 20 to 30 seconds of the movie as it opens, because it's sort of like a reconnaissance mission that they're undertaking in the sand, and there's no noise. All you're seeing is just the back shot of the desert or the dune they're in, and like Josh said, the faces popping up, and it sort of just stays with you. And that is a continuing theme throughout the movie, and that's just Denny Villeneuve all over. If you've ever seen any of his other movies, which you probably have because the man is an absolute legend when it comes to directing films, he knows exactly how to get beautiful wide shots, beautiful backgrounds and foregrounds, and have everything sort of beautiful to the eyes, and have your eyes drawn to not just what's in front of you, but also what's in the background, what's in the foreground, multiple different things on the screen. I mean, yes, Blade Runner 2049 got panned a little bit because it wasn't quite as good as the first one, but that movie was stunning to watch. The way he was able to build that world and make it his own, even though it already had this wonderful backstory, is the exact same in Dune. This movie, even though you've already seen the dunes and all this sort of stuff in the first film, in this one, it felt like somewhat new scenery, even though it's just the same old sand dunes. He just adds a few little things that really help world build, and that's what you want in a movie that's so, such a big tale like Dune.
He probably does that enough with the exposure to the lighting. If you look and put heavy lighting onto a certain character, the background's not going to even be observant by the eye to you. So the way that he's able to perform that as well, and that also has to be credited to Greg Fraser as well. His cinematography he has to be a massive name to be mentioned here. I mean, the fact that he's not even on the poster is a main capturing point for the public. I mean, because most people don't really know who cinematographers are. But his filmography is amazing. If you look through his work, he's done The Batman, and Batman's probably considered one of the best cinematography movies of our generation, at the moment at least. So he's done a very good job with this film as well.
Now, one of the knocks for the first film, I think, that you would have heard from certain reviews and things like that for people who weren't accustomed to the source material was that it was a little bit boring because it was fleshing out sort of the backstory and what needed to be known for this movie to progress. And as someone or people who don't know the books and the source material, it did come across as a little bit boring. This second film, you do not have that problem whatsoever. It is full of action-packed sequences. It is full of crazy cool fight scenes, really cool futuristic machinery, really cool battles between the Fremen and the Harkonnens, and really shows off the ability of Paul Atreides and what he can really grow into, I guess, and why he is considered by some as a messiah, because his ability to use the Dune to his advantage and also use the Harkonnens' tendencies against them really was shown a lot in this film. And I think you could tell that the director of the movie might have heard that about the first one, that was a little bit boring, or maybe didn't have enough action scenes apart from obviously the opening sequence where House Atreides gets destroyed. So this film really packs it all in.
And one thing this movie did to perfection was not have the loudest of instruments possible just bang in your ears and take you out of that fight scene when they're building that up. And movies seem to do this quite a lot now by having the loudest and most adrenaline-seeking music behind them to build that up. But in fight scenes, you forget sometimes about that raw battle of a fight, and I think that in of itself gives you the adrenaline rush plus that added layer of interest. And I think that can only be attributed to our boy Hans Zimmer. Give that man all the awards, everything possible. He is a master at knowing when to give you that famous call to arms that Dune's well known for, and when to not add that layer of music in certain scenes. And I just don't think we can speak highly enough of him. He's the GOAT.
The opening sequence wasn't the only scene that sort of had this drawn out effect that would make you on the edge of your seat, sort of waiting for the next moment. Another scene that perfectly encapsulates the way the director was able to draw out sequences in this movie but also keeping you on the edge of your seat is a scene where Paul is essentially becoming a Fremen, and in order to do that they have to tame these gigantic earthworms and essentially wakeboard them through the desert, which, by the way, looks absolutely like a lot of fun. And the intensity that you felt in this scene, it goes silent. He's perched up on the top of this sand dune. Everyone's watching him because, you could essentially die if it goes wrong. And this scene goes for probably like nearly 5 minutes. And then it slowly builds and builds and builds. As you see in the background, the giant worm is essentially coming through the sand, and the suspense builds up, and the music, like Josh said, Hans Zimmer comes in, and everything just works. This scene that we're talking about now is just a perfect way to describe the fact that this movie will just have you on the edge of your seat the whole time, and also interested and invested. And that's what you want in a movie that goes for 2.5 hours.
And that's exactly right. You want to be invested, and you get invested through multiple stories, multiple plot points, and you also just get invested into the love. You get invested into the drama, the tragedy. You just get invested to all of it. It's just not solely based on the fight scenes. There is a lot more to this film than just kill man, or woman kill woman, or the war between both parties. There is heaps of other things. So you're not going to just go here and think to yourself, oh, it's going to be like the first one. How boring of just a story being told to you with a little bit of action injected in here. There's way more than that. Way more.
A lot of talk about this film, you would have heard, has been about Austin Butler. He stars as Phaedra Hutha, who is the nephew of Stellan Skarsgård's character, Baron Harkonnen. Now, just quickly on Baron Harkonnen, he looked exactly like Jabba the Hutt in this film, and you could tell from this movie that Star Wars got a lot of its ideas and paid a lot of homages to Dune, with a lot of the landscapes and a lot of the plot and the theme and the characters in this film. You can really tell that Dune had such a big effect on sci-fi as we know it in this day and age. I mean, there was literally scenes that looked exactly like Star Wars 2 Attack of the Clones. Not to say that it was ripped off, but it's interesting to see that.
It's heavily implied.
Now back to Austin Butler. While his character was really cool in this film and he was really menacing and he sort of was the perfect villain, I guess you could say. If you've seen Rebel Moon, he was essentially the villain in that character just remade all over again. Just a sadomasochist, which I don't understand. A lot of directors and creators and writers are starting to write and all these villains are just massive sadomasochists. I mean, Baron Harkonnen is a sadomasochist in this film too. We see him just abusing these 4, 5, 6 slave girls in this film. Same with Austin Butler's character. And
also, I've noticed that a lot of the imperialist is coming back for these bad guys. Very like. I don't know if I can say it on YouTube, but very like. A lot of these uniforms, a lot of the armies, a lot of the outlook of the costumes, the set designs, especially for the bad guys, that is, because you have, 4.5 million people lining up all in imperialistic outfits, plus them in the same regime, I think you might say. Groups that they're in, that they stand in when they're listening to their superior, it's exactly the same. I've noticed that's like a rebirth as well in films, but it still looks good.
And I can understand why all the hype has been about him as a villain, because he really was a great villain in this film. I just don't think they fleshed him out enough. We see certain aspects of him where, like I said, he's a sadomasochist, he loves pain, he loves to fight. He's a great fighter, he's a great warrior, but they didn't flesh out his motives. You get a few little comments about what his weaknesses are or what he might have done when he was younger and how he got sort of the name that he has. But that's about it. And I feel like they really could have gone somewhere with his character and really sort of had him as the perfect opposite to Timothée Chalamet's character Paul Atreides, and just have them sort of on a pedestal one against each other, because they're so different but they could also be so much the same. If I had a criticism for this film, that would be one thing I would say, because like I said, they built the foundation of a really great character here. It just sort of didn't go anywhere.
Do you mean Austin Butler? Is that who you're talking about?
And he's also haunted by the ghost of Elvis Presley. I think Elvis Presley's been reincarnated inside Austin Butler. I mean, I didn't think I'd be watching Dune 2 and I would hear, "Thank you very much. Listen here, Paul Atreides. I'm coming to get you." But I did. And when he started singing "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog," it really worked. I actually really enjoyed it. And I thought watching the space guys do their Jailhouse Rock was really great when he was in jail.
Also, you got to shout out to the costume designers with those blue suede shoes. They were next level on him. So as we all know, there is this love connection between Zendaya and Timothée. And in this film, they kind of really go into it. They really divulge all about their love story. And it kind of felt that like Tom Holland was punching the air at this.
I know my boy Tom Holland is crying right now.
He's in the corner, and that's why he did that movie. That's why. Because he thought, she gets one, I get one.
If you know, you know.
But I have to say that their chemistry was pretty good on screen. And I also think that because they work so well together, that it kind of built this kind of dichotomy of, does she love him or does she not? Is she more loyal to her people, the Fremen, or is she just accepting him now because he's something different? And that was talked about in the film. But
a minor negative I had for the film, and maybe it was the way it was edited, or maybe it was actually the way it was supposed to be shown on screen. And I'll be honest, I don't know I haven't read the book, so I don't know the full lore of this movie. But I found that their relationship was a little bit bipolar. One scene, she's in love with Paul Atreides, and then the next scene, she's just randomly not in love with him anymore, or is angry at him. And I know that she's wrestling with sort of ideologies in her own mind, because he's in this film, he's wrestling with his ideologies, and she's the commoner and he's the royalty and all this and that. But it just kind of came off, in my opinion, confusing on the screen. I don't know if that's what it was for everybody else. I could be wrong here. I'm not too sure. But, you know, she's one scene trusting him and in love, and then the next scene no trust at all. And I just wasn't sure where that was coming from.
Another thing I'd like to mention is that there is a point in the film where Tim on screen, or Paul on screen, is starting to fulfill the prophecy. And it gets to a point where he goes into basically what Mecca is. He goes right into Mecca, right into the Holy Sepulchre. You're just kind of forced to believe that he's now a leader. You kind of just don't want to buy that he's the new chosen one. He's something about his screen presence. I actually don't think it's his acting. It's nothing to do with his acting. It's nothing to do with the script writing. It's just how his presence is on screen. It doesn't kind of go over well. It kind of just feels like it's Tim walking on screen and he's yelling and doing what he wants to do. It doesn't feel like what Paul Atreides would kind of be, you know? Like I want that vigor, I want that real brutality when he's getting in there saying, "I am who I am." So you take it or leave it, and that's how it is. But it doesn't come across that way. It comes across as kind of, you have to allow yourself to believe that he is that person, and then you can kind of get over that hurdle. But it's not a massive point, but it's just a point that I noticed throughout the film.
Yeah, I also agree with that point, that in this film, Timothy's character is meant to portray a leader and is meant to show leadership and become a leader of people. And just Timothée Chalamet on screen isn't quite that yet. Now, I don't know if it's because we've seen him only in movies where he's sort of not a big force on the screen in a way that you would go to battle with him. I like to think of someone like Russell Crowe in Gladiator. His ability to control the screen and command the screen and make you want to go to war for him really came through on the screen. Whereas Timothée Chalamet in this film, you believe it because it's written in, but you don't quite believe it because he's convinced you that that's who he is or that's who his character is. Now, I don't know if it's because he looks young. I don't know if it's because it's Timothée Chalamet. It doesn't really change a lot when he's acting, in a way.
He weighs $140. Like, the guy doesn't weigh that much, so it doesn't bring much presence to the screen, you know?
I don't know if it's because we've become conditioned to see someone as a leader in these films or movies as someone big and strong and heroic and boisterous. It's not a knock on his acting. Like we said, his acting is great. I mean, he's rarely ever done anything. I don't even know if he has never done anything acting-wise that was wrong. It's just, there's something about when he's trying to sort of lead be strong and commanding and be big and be bigger than himself, that doesn't really draw you in or convince you as much as he would hope. Coming off of Willy Wonka as well doesn't really help his cause, because obviously the last few films we've seen him in, he's been this sort of fun, loving guy. And in this film, he is that as well in some scenes. And then 4, 5, 6 scenes later, now he's this big leader and you're supposed to rally behind him. And it just sort of doesn't quite catch like I think the director wanted it to. No fault of theirs. It's just, in my mind, I guess, I don't know if people agree or not, but in my mind, it's just Timothée Chalamet. It's not this big, all-encompassing leader that's going to lead all the people into, paradise.
Any one of his fight scenes brings that. He brings that presence. He brings it all and everything else. But you see the storyline of him turning from a prince into a king and now into a leader. It's amazing to see him do that, but he plays the prince role so well, and that, not entitled, but justified prince, where he's brought up in certain ways. He's brought up in the best conditions. He's brought up by the royal blood, and he's known as royalty. That has an effect on the character, and it also has an effect on how he brings that leadership role, like his father. I don't know if he was trying to be his father. I doubt it, because in the movie it stipulates otherwise, but he just doesn't bring that same presence, and I would have liked him to have, I don't know, nothing. I don't even know what I would have liked him to bring. It's just, it just didn't hit right. That's all it didn't. But anyway, we're going to have to give this a rating, and I'm going to give this a very high 90s. I want to say 90, 94, 95, like very, very high. There wasn't really much wrong with it. Other than what we've said, they're the only things that kind of I had an issue with, but other than that, the movie was amazing. Like, I can't give enough props to Hans Zimmer, Greg Fraser, and Dunny. Like, these people who are behind the scenes filming this and constructing the world that we're supposed to see it like, from the book to the screen. It is something that you would actually call almost magical. Like, you're encapsulated by this film, by the scenery, by the visuals, just how they do it. I mean, and the acting also aids to everything that has been given to them. And I just can't speak about this movie highly enough.
My rating for this film will be about 90%. It was incredible. The acting was amazing. The locations were amazing. The direction was incredible. He never misses a trick. Hans Zimmer on the score. You know what you're getting. I loved the chemistry between Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya on screen. And the film just did really well at keeping me interested throughout the whole movie and blending in a perfect amount of plot and action sequences and not being boring like the first one. If you haven't read the books, did this film make you want to read them? Because it did for me. I feel like now I want to read the books.
Anyway, guys, it's been another End Cut movie review. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace, we out.
Peace.
And cut.